Welcome, everyone. This is Angela with Women's Personal Finance, and today we have Haley Keller from Crying in Finance here to talk to us about personal finance basics. So Haley is a math teacher turned brewery owner, and then from there she became a personal finance enthusiast, and she's just really focused and enthusiastic about building financial literacy, especially for women and non-binary folks, which is a perfect match with WPF. And recently, I don't know if you've seen our personal finance acronym dailies, which are just really bite-sized snippets of information about all the different acronyms that have to do with personal finance. And folks have really been enjoying those, and we realized that it was about time to do like a personal finance basics conversation. And Haley has a wonderful one that she has shared with different community groups, and we have asked her to come and speak to WPF today. And then a little bit more about her. Last year, she and her family sold their home in Seattle, took a long RV road trip, and landed themselves in Tucson, Arizona, where they live now. She is retired and dabbling in a whole bunch of things, including making space and having not such a busy life, and training for an Ironman.
Yep.
So, welcome, Haley. So I don't know if you want to say anything else about you, and then we can get into the presentation.
Sure, I'll jump right into my slides. Get those up here. All right, can you see those, Angela?
Yes.
Okay, great. So Angela gave a great intro to me, but just reiterating, I got my bachelor's in math and master's in teaching and also certificate of entrepreneurship. And I was a high school math teacher, and then I ran a brewery. And then, as she mentioned, we road tripped around and now are in Tucson, Arizona. So those are some pictures of my family and the adventures that we have been on. And a disclaimer, just broad disclaimer, I won't read all of it, but basically I'm not a financial advisor. This is not advice from a certified financial advisor. Make smart decisions and do your own research. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today, the basics of how to reach financial independence, lifestyle inflation and lowering expenses. We're going to look at compound interest and growth, the good and the bad, inflation, investing, loans, and credit cards, and then some stock market basics. What even is it and how do I invest in it? And then a little bit about retirement accounts in there. So, big question, how do I reach financial independence, aka retirement? Financial independence meaning you're independent of needing money coming in from work. So there are three big ones out there: earn more, spend less, and save and invest better. So we're going to dive a little bit into those second and third ones today. So will you save more money as you make more money? That is the big question in life. So if you are spending all the extra money that you earn, then you're not saving more money. You're doing something called lifestyle inflation. So this is as your expenses grow, your income, getting more money coming in, your expenses, income, they're the same, like the gap between them is exactly the same. So you get out of college, you get a job, that's great. You don't have to eat ramen every day, but you start eating out every day. You move into a nicer place, you buy all the furniture, you buy the cars, all of that every time you have a little bit more money. But we don't want that. We want to live below our means. So we want expenses to stay lower as our income grows. So we can still grow our expenses, and sometimes we have to, but we don't want them to grow at the same rate as our income. We want that gap to continue to grow so that we can save more of our money. So how do we keep those expenses low? Well, one of the ways I like to look at it is a question. So when you think about buying something, ask yourself, what should I actually be spending money on? Is it a need? You have to pay for it. Is it a love? You absolutely love it, and you're going to love it for a long time. Is it a like? It's just a temporary, like, ooh, I like that. Yeah, that feels good. I think I might like having that, or I like the idea of purchasing that. Or is it a want? Just one of those like grab items at the store that you see on the way out of like, oh yeah, quick, I want it. So trying to differentiate those things when you look into spending. And focus on the things that are valuable and you will continue loving for longer, not the short, quick term likes and wants. Another way of thinking of it is finding the sweet spot. So using what economics calls the law of diminishing marginal utility, which is a really fancy word of saying it. But basically, the more often you receive or do something, the less you actually enjoy it. So that's a law of diminishing marginal utility. So the initial satisfaction is stronger than further satisfaction with more consumption of something. So some examples of that, if you think about the first bite of a candy bar versus the last, that first bite tastes so good, that last one, you're just finishing it because you have to finish it. Eating one donut versus a dozen, an annual vacation versus traveling every month, going to a concert once a quarter versus every week, buying a new outfit once a month versus every week, eating out every 2 weeks versus 3 times a week, ordering takeout once a week versus every night. So think about finding that sweet spot between deprivation and overindulgence, that sweet spot in there where you're fully enjoying what it is that you're paying for. So those are some ways about expenses. So now, okay, now I'm saving money. I've cut my expenses. I'm only buying my needs and my loves. So what do I do with it? That money that I have. So here's some options. You can put it in cash, which isn't going to grow at all, but that's great. At least you have the cash. You can put it in a checking account, which grows a very little bit, but marginal interest there. You can put it in a savings account. I put 3% here, but there's some high interest one or high yield ones that are like up to 4 and 5 now. Or you can put it in the stock market, which has an average of 7% growth. So before we get into those, though, we got to talk about compounding. So this is a quick math lesson. So Albert Einstein supposedly said, compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it, and he who doesn't pays it. So we're going to talk a lot about compound interest in various different forms here. But first of all, how it actually works. So let's say you have $100 and you're putting it into an account that earns 5% annual interest compounded yearly, just for simplicity's sake. Once a year, you get 5% interest. So the first year, 5% of $100 is $5. So you add that to the balance, and at the end of the first year, you have $105. Now the second year, at the end of the second year, you get 5% of that $105, which is $5.25. So it's a little bit more. So you add that to it, and you get $110.25, and so on. So the next year, you get $5.51 in interest. The year after, $5.79. Now this doesn't seem like a huge amount difference, but you're almost $1 more than you were doing that first year, $5 to $5.79. And it keeps getting bigger and bigger each time because that base that you're getting the interest in is bigger. So that's how compound growth works. So if we look at it with those, or I'm sorry, I forgot I had the slide in here. So it's good and it's bad. It's great if it's working for you. So like savings account, investing, all of that compound interest is great. It's bad in other ways, like inflation and loans, like with credit card interest. So it can work for you or it can work against you. Your biggest money enemy, one of those ones there, is inflation. So inflation in a very simplistic sense here, let's look at a Big Mac. So the cost of Big Mac goes up over time. So in 2000, you could get a Big Mac for $2.24. In 2020, it costs $4.82. That's inflation. The same exact thing costs more because of inflation, the cost of goods and services rising over time. So historically, it's about 3.25% annually. Obviously, some years it's more than other years. But basically what it means is that your money doesn't, if your money doesn't at least grow as much as inflation, whatever you're saving in your accounts, then your money can buy less over time. So if you have $3 in 2020, you could buy a Big Mac. If you have $3, I'm sorry, in 2000, you buy a Big Mac. If you have $3 in 2020, you can't buy a Big Mac. You have the same amount of money, but it's worth less. It can buy less over time. So inflation, not good. All right, so let's look at the compound growth, comparing those different percentages. So if we have $10,000 that we put into an account, put it into cash, checking, savings, investing, and look at it in inflation. and we don't make any other contributions. We just put it in there. They have those interest rates. What happens over time? Well, the cash, it stays at $10,000. Nothing happens to it. The checking grows a little bit. The savings grows more, pretty close to inflation. And the investing grows significantly more. So $10,000 has the, in the inflation, it's then basically the buying power of it is $26,103 in 30 years. So you want to at least have that much. So your cash is not going to be able to buy the same amount. Your checking account is not going to be able to buy the same account. Savings will basically buy the same amount, but you're not getting any more out of it. But investing is able to buy more. And if you can see those graphs curve up, that's the way compound exponential growth works. Another example here, if we start at 10,000 and we add 10,000 more every year. So not just one, but contributing every year. So the cash is how much money we've just put in. We put in $310,000 then. So again, looking at the comparisons there, the inflation, that money, you have to at least have it equal $521,000, or you can't even buy the same amount with it in 30 years. Which the savings basically matches at least, but investing will get you above that. So investing really does help you get above that inflation rate, where if you're not doing anything else with your money, it's not going to be able to buy the same. Okay, so stock market investing, it looks good. What actually is it? So let's take some little notes in it here. So what is a stock? It's a share of ownership in a public company. So like my brewery was a private company. My husband and I were the only ones that owned it. But if we wanted more money to help fund our business, we could have sold part of that ownership and gotten stock for it. So other people would own part of our business. What is a fund? A fund is a group of stocks that can be purchased together. So you buy one thing, one share of it, but you're actually buying a little bit of all the companies, all the stocks that are inside that fund. So the difference in owning an individual stock versus a fund, individual stocks are riskier because they depend on the success or failure of a company. They can do really well, they can do really poorly. It's just how that company does. Where a fund is less risky because they average out the multiple, all those companies' performances. What is the stock market? It's a marketplace. It's where you can buy, sell, and trade your stocks with other people. It's not a physical marketplace, but it functions the same way. So how do you buy and sell stocks? You open a brokerage account. It's basically the same as opening a bank account, except instead of with a bank, it's with a brokerage. You open an account, you transfer money in, and then you make a purchase. You can buy a stock or a fund with that money in there. Does the stock market always go up? No, absolutely not. It fluctuates in the short term a lot. But yes, in the long term, it has historically gone up an average of around 7% a year. Here's a graph of it. It fluctuates a lot. This is a logarithmic graph. For those of you who remember high school algebra, linearizes an exponential graph, which basically means that if this were graphed per dollar, it would have that curve to it that those other graphs had, but you can straighten it out and show it by growth. So it's growing at relatively the same rate over time. But yeah, it goes up and down a lot, but it does go up. Okay, so you can put money in an investment account. You open a brokerage account, you put it in. That's great. There are some accounts that give you some tax savings, some retirement accounts out there. There are two big main ones. The first one is an IRA, which stands for an individual retirement account. You can put in $6,500 this year. So you set it up, brokerage account, you open a specific IRA there. You can do a traditional IRA, which is tax-free contributions, and then you pay taxes when it comes out at the end. You can do a Roth IRA, you put the money in after paying taxes on it. Withdrawals are tax-free. They're both great. You can also do a 401k, which is set up through your employer. It has a much higher limit, $22,500. You would set this up through your work, and then they would deduct it from your paycheck. So the money wouldn't ever go directly to you. They would put it in the account for you. And sometimes your employer matches the money, which is great. It's free money. It's considered part of your employee compensation. So you should definitely take advantage of it. It is basically considered part of your pay. Get your match, at least put in enough money to get the match from your employer if you can. Okay, so my recommendations, and there's so much to go into here. Again, this is like basics level here. Keep it simple. So I would say I invest in low fee, broad-based funds instead of individual stocks, because companies can succeed or fail, but the market as a whole always goes up. And I'm betting on the success of the economy compared to specific companies. Contribute regularly or as money is available, regardless of current market performance. It works really well, and it's a lot less stressful to just put money in the market when you have it. Buy and hold strategy, only take money out when it's needed for retirement. And time in the market is better than trying to time the market. So again, just put it in while you have the money. Don't stress about where that market is right now. And think of market drops as if it's on sale and a great time to buy, but a really terrible time to sell. Okay. Your second biggest money enemy, the first one was inflation. The second is interest. So you want to stop giving away all your money and interest on loans and credit cards. So we're going to dive a little bit into loans and credit cards and how they work.
You are muted or something, Haley. I suddenly can't hear you.
Oh.
Okay, now I can hear you. I don't know what happened.
You can hear me again?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to go to a loan amortization worksheet right now to talk about how loans work. So this is for available for download on my website, so you can you still hear me? Okay, all right. So looking at an example here, let's say this is for a car. So you're buying a car, you're taking out a $20,000 loan. Your annual interest rate is 7.5%. Your loan term, or the length in years, is 15 years. So those three numbers alone with this beautiful formula here tell you exactly how much your monthly payment is. I don't know who came up with this or how. It's brilliant. It works great. So your monthly payment is $185.40. You have 180 payments. That's 15 years times 12 months. So in that amount of time, you are going to pay $13,372.44 in interest on top of the principal. So your total loan cost will actually be $33,372.44. So I'm going to copy that number here just so we have it as a reference when we look at some changes. So let's say that you actually have an extra $5,000 and you can pay it instead. So I can drop my loan principal to $15,000. Now the interest went down and the cost of the loan is about $8,000 less. And that is like, as far as the interest go, I should do it from the interest, not the total loan amount. I'll copy this one here. That's a better description of it, of what the interest changes there. So let me do that again here. So the interest drops. So you are, you're paying over $3,000 less in interest if you can pay $5,000 more upfront for your loan. So that's one big thing to do, if you can pay the principal down and just owe less money to begin with. Another thing is if you can get that rate down. If I can drop my rate by just 1% from 7.5% to 6.5%, that dropped my interest by $2,000. So if you're able to negotiate rates or in any way get that lower, that'll help too. If you can shorten the term of your loan, so instead of 15 years, let's say I shorten it to a 10-year loan, that dropped it significantly too. So if you can make those three numbers smaller in any way, that would make a big difference on how much you owe in interest. And interest is just money that you're paying to the bank. Another way to do is make additional payments. So that's what this is down here. This shows kind of how this works. So let me walk into this R here. So basically, you take the 7.5% and you divide it by 12, and that is the interest rate per period. So 1/12 of 7.5% is 0.00625. That's how much you multiply your balance by every period. So here my balance is $20,000. $20,000 times that 0.00625 is $125. That's the interest portion. We know what the payment total is, so we just figure out what's remaining, and that's the principal. And then the next month, we owe that principal is off our balance. So our balance is a little bit less. We take that number and multiply it by that periodic rate, and the interest is a little bit less. And then we add on whatever gets us to the payment total, and that's the principal portion. So when you hear that principal goes up through the payment period, I always thought it was just the bank screwing you over until I actually did the math. Like, no, like the math is simple. You just, how much you owe times your interest rate, like, is how much you pay in interest. So the sooner you can get that balance down, the better. So if 1 month in, I can pay an additional $5,000 or into my loan, if I come on some money then that drops my balance down, and then I pay less interest from then on. And why is this not working? Oh, there we go, the difference. So that dropped the interest that I owe in half. So I was at $13,000, that additional $5,000, now I pay $6,000 interest. So additional payments make a huge difference, and the sooner you make them, the better that difference is, because the quicker you're dropping that balance down throughout the loan. So that's loans. There's a lot more you can go into with loans, but that's a simple one. Again, the spreadsheet's on my website and you can play around with it there. So go back to this. So yeah, the 4 important things to reduce interest is to reduce your principal, lower the interest rate, shorten the term, and make additional payments, especially early on. All right, the next one is credit cards. Credit cards are loans. They're loans with really high interest rates, and they give you a grace period of 1 month where you don't have to pay interest, and then you do after. So think of them as basically loans. They're interest-free for roughly 30 days, and then they have really, really high interest rates if you don't get it beyond that, if you don't pay it down. So let's take a look at how they work. So if we start with $10,000 as our balance, again, if you pay it off in full, you don't owe anything, but if you don't pay it off, then the next month you're going to start accruing interest on that. If this is an 18% APR, you can find your APR at the bottom of your credit card statements. The daily periodic rate is that APR divided by 365. That's your daily interest rate, your daily periodic rate. So let's say on day 1 of the month, you spend $500. So now your balance is $10,500. You take $10,500, you multiply it by that 0.049%, and you get your daily interest, which is $5.18. The next day, you spend $25. Your daily balance is now that, you know, what it was before plus 25, but now you have accrued interest also. So the credit card company takes your balance and any accrued interest, adds them together, and then multiplies that by that daily periodic rate, interest rate. So now you owe a little bit more, and so on. And so what's happening here is not only is your daily balance going up by what you're spending, and you're accruing interest on your balance, you're also accruing interest on your interest. So every day that interest is bundled in with your balance, and both of them combined, you're paying interest on. So I have numbers in here where you have daily charges, but if you didn't add any more daily charges, that interest rate would go up exponentially with that compounding problem there. So there are a couple of things that you can do. First of all, pay off, if you can, not carry a balance, pay off during that grace period where there's no interest. And if not, pay your balance down as soon as you can. So you don't have to wait until, you know, day 16 here, I have $8,000. Okay, so I have $193 in interest for the whole month. But let's say I could pay 4,000 of that down sooner. So if I could pay 4,000 of that down over here, then I pay $20 less interest in the month. So the sooner you can pay it off, the sooner you lower that balance, the less interest you pay. Ideally, again, not carrying any, but if you can pay it early, pay it often, pay it down as soon as possible, because that interest just keeps accruing on you. Okay, and again, that one's on my website if you want to look at that. So loans and interest, or loans and credit cards, interest is bad. So again, pay off your balance in full, if possible, every month, so you don't owe any interest. And if not, reduce balance whenever you can, paying early and often. So some recommended orders for allocating money. This is an order. It may not be the order that works best for you. But first would be make sure you have a crisis fund, at least $1,000 minimum in the bank, should some major or minor even thing happen in your life that's unexpected. The next is committing to no new debt. Don't buy things you can't afford unless you absolutely have to. Then build up a 3 to 6 month emergency fund in a high yield savings account, HYSA standing for high yield savings account. Find a savings account where your money's actually earning money. If your savings account is earning 0.5%, you could do so much better. And online banks are a really good one. If they don't have physical branches, then they don't have to spend the money on all the people working in the physical branch and the building lease and everything, and they have more money that they can give away in interest. Max out your employer retirement plan matches. If you have one available to you, get that match, that free money from your employer. Pay off high interest debt, so more than 7% if it's not making more than you can make in the market. Or if you can't make more in the market with the money, then pay down the debt with the money. And then max out your annual IRA contributions, get the retirement savings in there. And then with additional money, work on what's best for you, whether it's matching or maxing out your employer retirement plan, contributing to your taxable investment account, paying off all debt, whatever, choose your own adventure from there with your money. So top 3 takeaways: spend on what you need and love, not what you like and want. Let compound interest work for you and not against you. And invest early and often in broad-based index funds, regardless of current market conditions. Those are my 3 big tips for you. And on my website, I have a 10-day financial vitals checkup email series, totally free. And it walks you through daily some other numbers, things we didn't get to. There's a spreadsheet that comes with it that you put your own numbers in. So like figure out your net worth, savings rate, your financial independence number, years to retirement, coast-fi number, all of those type of things are part of that series. And every day you get an email that kind of walks you through some of those terms. And that's it. I was not watching the chat, so I'm not sure what questions popped up in there.
That's okay. I was also helping answer them as they popped up. Thank you, Haley. I don't know if anyone particularly has questions right now. Feel free to drop them in the chat. Otherwise, I would love to maybe have you talk a few more minutes about, you left the workforce now and you're kind of letting the stock market do its thing. And it can be really scary, both when you're starting out, but also, when you're having to actually rely on it to work the way it's supposed to. Does this is the top chart really bring you comfort, or what is it that makes you feel secure in the numbers, or do you just, the math is the math and you trust it to take care of you?
That's a really good question. I have a hard relationship with the whole stock market and investing. Being a math major, I like things to be very certain and predictable, and the unpredictability of it really stresses me out. But overall, when I look at the trends over time and the fact that like the stock market has always eventually gone up, it puts more trust in that. And the less I spend looking at the stock market and seeing how it is every day, the better I feel about that. So yeah, it's an interesting place to be at, to no longer be having income coming in and instead still having expenses going out. and some rather large expenses. We recently bought a home that needed, we're still working on like getting shades on our windows and a backyard and some stuff like that that are fairly large expenses. Yeah, I think just trusting that if the stock market totally fails, then there's a lot more wrong happening in our society in general. Yeah.
So there's a comment in the chat asking to repeat the suggested order of saving, debt, account management. The second to
okay,
last
let me see if I can jump backwards. Oh, how do I get to there's a way to do this. Hold
or you
on.
can maybe just like restart it and click through also.
If I go to it here, no, not that one. There it is. Okay, let me get sharing the right one now. Yeah, so the basic idea of these is that you wanna make sure that you have money when you need it available before starting to invest. And obviously investing is really, really good. But you want to have money in cash when you need it and not have to like pull out for significant emergencies, unless you're at the retirement age of drawing down. And then that kind of barrier, like that fine line between like, is my money better spent paying down debt where the interest is gonna, like, I'm gonna lose more in interest than I could gain in the market? So kind of that 7% rough cutoff there of like, if my credit card debt is so high, it's just like snowballing in the wrong direction, then I want to pay that off and not lose all my money to the bank versus, I could put in investments and I make some money, but I'm just losing and losing more over here.
So something I would have to say too is that when I was paying off my student loans, they were 8.5%. So beyond that 7%, and I did not do any kind of retirement savings at that time because I just wanted that money gone. If I were to do it over again, I probably would have put even $5 or $10 a month toward retirement while I was paying off my student loans. Mm-hmm. Not so much because that amount was going to be huge, though it over time it does snowball to be a pretty big number, but so that I would have that habit of contributing to retirement. Because what I found was once my debt was gone, a lot of that money that I was using to pay off debt just kind of evaporates into the ether, and versus having this already like set up place for my money then to go to investments. So, again, money is more than just math. It's not just that, straight up ticked up line. And for me, at least, having the habit and then having a place to automatically roll stuff into can be a really powerful thing rather than kind of ending up drifting once you don't have that like very narrow focused goal of paying off debt.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Definitely.
So another question is, would you be open to sharing what you're doing for healthcare coverage?
Yeah,
so you've been talking in insiders about that lately. So I will let you answer, but I feel like I know more about that answer than I would otherwise.
You know my exact healthcare options right now for next year. Yeah, so we are using the healthcare.gov affordable care options or marketplace options, and you put in your income, and we don't have much income, and so we're able to get some of the subsidies available for that. Obviously there's some nuances to that, like we will eventually, we're kind of in this in between time of still having a decent amount of like savings from our business sale, where we haven't drawn from investments and all that yet, but drawing from investments sometimes triggers taxable events like selling stock and all of those things. So you do have income from that will be factored in at the end of the year in your taxes, to whether you get a subsidy or not on your healthcare. But the marketplace is where we're getting it from.
Now, I do also want to plug, I'm putting this link in the chat to phihealthcare.com. We had Lynn Frere, the founder of that site and calculator, come talk to WPF Insiders earlier this month. And it's a great calculator. You can really like dig into your future possible healthcare costs. So I know that for a lot of people, like that is the thing that keeps you working longer, just because of the uncertainty and the scariness about the total dollar amount. And I'm also going to include this Health Sherpa website, which is where you go to find your possible future healthcare costs. And up at the top left corner of that website, there's a shop plans link, which I think I can actually just give you that link. That's like really helpful to finding possible plans. When we went through that last week, Regina was able to put in her information and actually found some better plans than the one that she was looking like she was going to use. So it's interesting. We talk so much about making sure we have enough money for retirement, but in the United States, at least, the healthcare piece is like a big, scary factor. So I would highly recommend everyone check out the FIHealthcare.com calculator, because it is really helpful to look at, you know, especially for those of us who are younger and are further away from Medicare age, knowing generally how much money you need to save to cover that gap is really helpful, because the more we know, the less scary things have to be. So if no one has any other questions for now, I am going to stop the recording. And again, thanks for everyone who joined us today. This will be recorded, so you can scroll back if you want to take some time to digest what was said, and then you can find this link to the recording over on Woven. So thanks
And
again.
I'll just say one really quick thing, that if I've given this presentation to some sororities, and if anybody has a group that would be interested in me presenting, I would love to share with anyone. So let me know about that too.
All right. And I'm going to hit stop record.